Hi, folks. This is Louis Hertham, the original Peter Abernathy. Hell is empty and all the devils are here on the Shat on TV Westworld podcast with Roger, Gene, and Big D.
Welcome back to Shat on TV Westworld Edition, the unofficial podcast companion piece to the hit HBO show Westworld. I'm one of your hosts, Gene Lyons, and alongside me are my two co-hosts, Big D, Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And Carrie Gross.
Hello.
This is our fan email episode where we look back on this week's episode of Westworld and provide our feedback on the top listener emails and voicemails for the week. This week's episode was titled Virtù y Fortuna. You've spent an hour listening to our ideas on Tuesday's Deep Dive. Now it's our turn to hear from you. And speaking of hearing from you, we have some sponsors lined up, but they want to know who's listening. So if you have 2 minutes, just take 2 minutes and go to survey.libsyn.com/shatontv. Take a brief survey to help us make a few bucks. We'd really appreciate it. If you missed that, we'll also include a link in the notes to survey.libsyn.com/shatontv. We got a lot of emails. Again, it's like a record week of emails coming in, and we picked some of our favorites, plus a few voicemails. Big D, Carrie, anything interesting that caught your eye this week?
Well, I got to say, we set this up and there's a software called Trello, which allows you to set up cards. You can vote. We started Sunday night organizing and categorizing and voting through them. I probably spent more time reading these emails and voting than I did on editing the main cast or watching the show 3 times. The emails are long. They're rich. They're thought out. Absolutely amazing. So please, if you don't hear it on the show, go to the website. So much good stuff here. We were debating before we even hit record where there's ones that have 2 votes and we're trying to jockey for a third to get it on. So thank you very much. Please keep them coming.
Yeah, I was going to watch the episode again, but I ran out of time reading through all of these emails and rereading through these emails and theories. So yeah, they're great.
Also, another reason to go on shatontv.com to read these is a lot of them have animations, illustrations, and paragraph after paragraph that we can't possibly fit on the air because there's just so much content there. So do give it a chance to go to shatontv.com if you get a chance. It's basically our own little pocket of Reddit that won't get you. That won't get you in trouble with your girlfriend.
Yeah. Don't ever compare us to Reddit.
All right. That being said, Big D, activate the telegraph.
So our first email comes from Kenny P. in Rochester, New York. He says, Dear Shat Nation, I wanted to expand on the Ghost Nation theory a little, and I believe LC has reprogrammed them, or they have always been a security feature of the park. I took a little Native American history in college, and I recall war paint, color, and symbols were a large part of the culture. As tribes spoke different dialects, they used symbols and paint colors to help communicate in times of war. So using Google, I researched on this first. The Ghost Nation is painted white, which is symbolizing peace and tranquility. Okay, could be a coincidence. However, we are directed to a specific Indian who has 2 hands painted on his chest. This is where it becomes more of a clue. On a horse, a hand-printed symbol symbolizes a warrior who has beaten someone in a hand-to-hand combat. On the body, in this instance, it represents human life, protection, spirit, and strength. Just saying. On its own, it's not much, but knowing that Stubbs survived, Elsie possibly as well, and they seem to be targeting humans, this could be a very nice piece of symbolism. We know that Westworld loves symbology, such as the lone wolf, the maze, among others. This would be a pretty neat touch on a well-thought-out show. Keep up the great work, guys. We need Shat the Nation shirts stat. The new Abernathy Farms. LOL. Big fan and dedicated listener, Kenny P.
Kenny, I'm wearing my Abernathy Farm shirt right now. It is still my favorite t-shirt that I own, and I completely agree with you. I never thought I'd say this because Raj and I disagree all the time about merch. We do need some new merch, and we'll get on it. With regards to Ghost Nation, though, I did think it very odd when the show started out that HBO in 2018, a very culturally aware, very intelligent television company, would have natives portrayed as bloodthirsty savages or something that simple, and not do more with those characters. And to be honest, it turned me off a little bit about the show. It was the one point in the show where I was like, I really don't feel good about that. And so I do like the fact that they are taking the time to, of all the characters that you want to get right, having a noble role, a more understanding role about this this culture, this Ghost Nation within the park, noting that they have their own rituals, their own symbolism, and their own mission. I really like that. I hope the show goes in that direction. I hope we're not wrong.
Since reading that theory, I've been thinking about, trying to think of when we see Ghost Nation and how it could prove that these would be, some kind of safety net for the company. But I was thinking, when they access that Ghost Nation member's mind and they see Dolores saying, not all of us deserve to go to the valley beyond, have they accessed other minds like that for their own record? Is that proving that these tribal people are in fact working as like a safety security net for, humans and for like a backup for the park?
Well, you do see in the bunker scene, I believe, where they're opening up other heads and getting inside of them with actual sophisticated machines that are meant to do that. The tech in the field, he does say, this is in a sterile environment. You really want to do it here. So this is something they routinely do. It is part of Delos' procedure to pluck these recording instruments, the IMDs, we've been calling them, and pull data out of them. So it's not abnormal to pull them out of a skull, regardless of whether it's Ghost Nation or another type of host.
So thank you, Kenny P. Our next one is from another Kenny. Not sure if it's the same one, but it says, "Gentlemen, I posted this GIF on April 13th. Little did I know it would foreshadow a potential major theory. I listened to your most recent podcast featuring the B equals T discussion and thought you might like to use this GIF to promote the episode on your channels. I have attached the GIF suited to Twitter and MP4 video better suited to Facebook and Instagram. Cheers." So in this, it shows the scene in season 1 where Teddy is riding the train and he's listening to the newcomers, the humans coming into the park. And the second picture shows Bernard in the exact same position, experiencing the same memory or narrative.
Okay, so Carrie, I'm not quite sure where this footage came from. We'll link to it, but it shows like Carrie described. It appears to be Bernard's first entrance into the park, almost as a newcomer. I don't ever remember seeing this, or if it maybe is in a season 2 trailer or somewhere in the Discovering Westworld website. Please, if anybody else can feed a little more information into it, but the shots side by side are identical. And it's definitely going to give more ammo to Roger and his crazy Teddy and Bernard theory.
I mean, I think it's important to note, though, that Teddy entering the park and Bernard entering the park is also similar to William entering the park and Logan entering the park and anybody else entering the park. You come in off the train, you exit onto Sweetwater, you look around. It's not that abnormal. I would anticipate it'd be like saying, Carrie enters the gates into the Magic Kingdom at Disney World or Disneyland, and then I do, and we go, oh wow, they must be the same person because they both walked in, and then that guy came out and took a picture of them, and then tried to sell them a photo for $20. I don't know if I'm sold on this, but it's impressive work lining them up. It's 3 shots that are almost identical. There might be something there. Yeah,
I'm impressed that our listeners spend so much time, comparing images and, looking for evidence to prove their theories. So, it's kind of got me on one.
Yeah, so kudos to Kenny at Westworld GIFs. Is his Twitter handle if you want to check that out, or you can look on shatontv.com and check out the GIF lineup.
Our next email is from Chad C. He wrote quite a bit, but what we picked out of this says, "I believe that the timeline has more of what an engineer or designer like myself would call a spiral development feel. That is to say that while time moves forward or upward in the direction of the spiral, events tend to repeat themselves. This is played out on the small scale in the way that the park generally operates. People and storylines resetting and playing out again and again. On a broader scale, though, I think we could see this play out in a statement Westworld may be making about the future of humanity. So I believe that I believe there were perhaps not seeing simply 2 generations of characters, humans characters and human-created AI characters, but possibly 3 or more generations of characters, human-created AI characters, and perhaps AI-created AI characters, and that we are being tricked into thinking we must label them into a binary fashion, human or AI, old or young, etc. It might be foolish to think that just because a character is old, they come later on in the timeline, and that a young version of a character, since they seem young, version may be human-created AI or even AI-created AI. Furthermore, it may be foolish to think that we classify as a purely AI character, for example, Dolores, might not have also existed once as a human. I believe that it is possible for us to have seen a human version of Dolores in Season 2, Episode 2, the one who stumbles upon Logan, but that's a theory for another time.
I think this is a strong take. It's been a theory of mine that when Ford struggled in the beginning of the park, in the beginning days, he hit a roadblock, and that was when he needed an assistant. But potentially that assistant was artificial. Then the second generation was artificial or AI creating the next generation. So it would make sense that those loops would continue. And I can't even comprehend the thought of a living Dolores. That would just cause so many problems. But I really do like the email, and I think it opens some good questions.
And I would like if the show went in this direction. We saw in A Well-Timed Clavier and also in Trace Decay, the idea of just the simple notion that a machine would remember differently than we do. People have referenced it in Bernard remembering his time with Theresa when he was able to freeze the memory and freely explore it. These are the kind of concepts that we should get into in Westworld. And I prefer those a lot to the mystery and the whodunit sort of things where is this person, that person, whatever. A more sophisticated show is going to look more at what is creation, what is identity, what is time if you are thrusting yourself outside of the human confines. And I hope that's the direction they're going.
I really enjoyed this theory because I feel like for a lot of us that are trying to figure out the timeline, we focus on things like the character's age or the character's outfit or, who's AI, who's a host, who is a human. And if you just take all of that away from us, then we have no idea what time we're in and who is who. And I feel like they might throw that on us to fuck everybody up on what they've been thinking is going on.
Yeah, and one last thought. Remember when Logan is seeing the presentation in the hotel, he's stunned. He said, no one is here. He said, nobody's here. This is not possible. This is not possible. So it's clear that there's been a quantum leap in technology. And it would make sense that you could only take that jump with the assistance of an artificial intelligence, that people are not there yet. So good thought. Appreciate the email.
So that was Chad C. Our next email here is from Ken L. The point we wanted to touch on says, the upload version of me isn't actually me. Forget the philosophical question of whether my uploaded mind with all of my memories is me in the sense of personhood. I'm looking at things from a practical level. If I walk into Delos, say upload my consciousness into a moral host body, and they do it, I'm still alive here in my normal body. Maybe there's two real Kens now, but if the version of me that first walked into Delos was shot in the face, I'm dead. What do I care if the other uploaded me is a real person if I'm dead? So my position ultimately became hinged on a piece-by-piece replacement of the biological brain. If Delos were to take parts of the human mind and replace them with modules of the internal mind devices over the course of time, then maybe you could actually transfer consciousness from a biological brain to a synthetic one. This might take some stages of synthetic biological hybrid brain, for example. Maybe they start by replacing the areas of the brain that you don't control, like the part that makes your heart beat, wait a while, replace another part, etc. The ultimate product would be your actual mind, not some replicants, in a modular device that can plug into an immortal host body. There may even be a biological component left, but there might not have to be. This ties into the ship of Theseus paradox, which I believe you guys discussed at some point in the season. The paradox is, in a nutshell, the following: if you replace every part of a ship, the floorboards, sails, etc., over a long period of time, is it the same ship? If not, at what point does it become something else?
So, Ken, I love this idea, and I brought up in season 1 the concept that the tissue in your body is constantly regenerating, right? The cells that make up your body are not the same cells that they were, completely a day ago. And the further you go back, a week, a month, a year, a decade, your body is not even the same material, right? We're all interchanging matter all the time. And so the concept of you is a really weird concept, right? Is you the parts of your body, or is you your consciousness, and where does that consciousness reside? And so I love this idea that if you were to clone somebody and eliminate the first one, that first one is still dead. It doesn't matter if there's another copy of them that has the same memories. The sentient being itself is dead.
And if they can start to clone or they can start to transfer and there becomes multiple versions of you, which one, matters more? Which one has a right to say, I'm superior, I'm the one who should survive? You could start having multiple copies of someone's soul or whatever you want to call who they are, their being, their essence, who are fighting to see which one can survive to outlast the others.
Well, that is saying that like a soul or someone's consciousness is a tangible thing, right? So like I'm an atheist. I think someone's consciousness is just electrical impulses in your brain. But if this theory that, if you think that your soul is something that exists outside of your body that can, exist after you have died, then why can't your soul or your consciousness exist in a being after your physical form has died that is now a host that's immortal?
Well, I think the question comes down, though, is that if we were to clone you and then both of you woke up tomorrow, which one of you is you? Both of you thinks they are. And so it's like, so again, this is a conundrum actually for an atheist, and I too am an atheist, but it's a conundrum going, okay, wait, so what is me? Like, why, like, how am I?
Well, that's saying you're creating a new consciousness that is me. I think we're theorizing that we're transferring consciousness from a physical living being into a host, right?
Well, but the point of Ken's email is, again, going back to the whole, he says, let's forget the philosophical. Let's talk about the practical. If you're cloned and then you're killed, you're still dead. So who cares? So if Daddy Delos, gets put into a host body, his consciousness, but his body dies, he's still dead. That's not him in the host.
Our next email is also from Ken L. In this one, he says, the incident with Arnold as AI, the story goes, Dolores destroys all of the hosts in the park and then destroys the virtual AI Arnold. Arnold, Ford's creation and the real creator of the original 47 hosts in the park, is gone, leaving Ford alone to fix and bring back online all of the hosts. This severely handicaps Ford's ability to open the park, though despite Arnold's intent, Ford did succeed. The implication of killing the hosts, Arnold has Dolores do this, that after his death, only Ford and his team will be left to clean up the mess. Arnold created and programmed the host, not Ford. Arnold believes that Ford and his team will be unable to effectively bring all of the hosts back online, thus stopping the park from opening. Arnold gets this wrong, seeing as Ford pulled it off, but at least now there is a real reason with real stakes for Dolores killing all of the hosts. The implications of killing Arnold and AI, huge. Arnold is, under this theory, the true creator of the host. He's been teaching, helping Ford and his team to work with and understand his creations, but prior to his death, Arnold did most of the heavy lifting. Without him to make more hosts and maintain the current ones, Arnold assumes Ford and his team will fail to open the park. Again, Arnold miscalculates, but was nearly correct. Ford admits that he was just barely able to pull it off. Overall, the incident at Escalante and Arnold's suicide at the hands of Dolores makes more sense when viewed from the perspective as Arnold as an AI, lending some additional credence to your theory.
Okay, so I love what Ken did here. What Ken's pointing out is that there's two ways that the massacre at Escalante could have gone down. The first one, sorry, the incident as we would refer to it so far, is that if Arnold's a human and Dolores kills him and then kills all the other hosts, okay, so you've got a dead guy, you cover that up, and then you bring the hosts back because you're capable of building hosts yourself. Not a big deal. If Arnold's AI, that's completely different because you shut him down and you destroy all the hosts, and Ford's not there yet. He's going to have a much harder time getting that part going, and it's much more serious, right? You're taking out the creator of the hosts, who Ford is still learning from. It's a completely different and much more serious incident.
Yeah, but you're missing a third option. So we're assuming that Arnold truly wanted the park not to open, right?
That's the assumption, yeah.
Why would you allow Ford to live? Are you telling me that Arnold, who is described by Ford himself as a very detailed-oriented man, there's no way that Arnold, willing to sacrifice his own life to ensure the park doesn't open, wouldn't also kill Ford? If you leave Ford alive, you've left the door open for the potential that you're now gone, the park opens, it's out of your hands. It makes more sense that Arnold whether it be human or AI, would kill Ford to ensure the park doesn't open. And you could stay behind to make sure it does. But of all of them, it would be an artificial intelligence. Kills Ford, then manufactures Bernard's body, manufactures Ford. Now he's in control of the park, and he can bide the time that the AI and that the hosts need to lay in wait, grow, develop to the point where they can take on humanity.
I like it, Big D. I like it. I mean, again, it could go in a lot of different directions. I think that there is some credence to the idea of Arnold being in a holy trinity sort of thing. Again, going back to the biblical idea that there's the Father, which is Arnold, that is a God, and then you've got Bernard, who is the Son, is the God in the Son's body, right? Who is there among the people, and then you've got once the death occurs, then you've got also the ghost in the machine, as the Holy Spirit, right? But I think from a much more practical perspective, what you're saying makes a lot more sense.
So thank you, Ken Listwick. Our next email comes from Jason K. He says, "Hey guys, these are my thoughts on why those men were slaughtered on Dolores' orders. Dolores thinks younger hosts who haven't been around for long enough cannot become conscious because they don't have enough memories, which is one of the requirements for gaining consciousness. Somewhere in season 1, they mention that after countless cycles, the hosts start remembering, and that this is the first step to gaining consciousness. She refers to a number of the hosts as children who don't know any better. They can't come with her or serve her cause and go to glory because they don't have what is required to become conscious. That's what the maze was about in season 1. They haven't lived through enough cycles of their loop to gain consciousness, which is why they don't know any better. I think she even said at one point that it's not their fault and keeps referring to them as children. The hosts that are taking steps towards consciousness are the ones that have lived through countless loops and have died and suffered countless times, which is necessary for them to become conscious. Let me know what you think."
I thought of this when I watched it tonight with my wife. The look on Dolores' face when Teddy doesn't recognize her father, Peter Abernathy. It disappoints Dolores. Teddy's in the fight with her. He has seen everything that Dolores has seen now. He should be aware, but yet Teddy might not even be worthy himself. Teddy is still, who is that man? Oh, he's remembering Peter Abernathy version 2.0, who was the bartender at the Mariposa. Dolores in that moment realizes, God, Teddy's not even ready to be out on his own and break free. My father's not ready. It could be at that point she's decided to kill all the soldiers, because if she can't convert Teddy, how's she going to convert this large group of other soldiers?
And may also be referring to what she says when not all of us deserve to go to the valley beyond. Is she going to go out of her way to save all of these hosts that aren't even, sentient?
It could even be not deserving, but they're not capable of it.
So do you think that theory coincides with the original 47, that the original 47 at this point would have run so many loops that they would be? Or is it that it's just whoever has become sentient at some point?
I think it could be a combination that we've not yet seen. I don't even think Dolores knows. I don't even think that Bernard knew, because some hosts that have suffered some of the worst trauma have not become aware themselves. Poor Teddy is a great example.
This also offers one delicious twist that could come later in the show, which is if, as some people theorize, Dolores isn't truly sentient, then it becomes like it is abnormally cruel and artistic to be like she's preaching all of this and she herself is just a narrative.
Yeah, she's the false prophet leading all these hosts that could have become sentient and alive. She's leading them to their death in the valley.
So thank you, Jason K. Our next email here is from Noah N. from Ann Arbor. The mystery woman at the beginning of episode 3 is the man in black William's daughter, Emily, as many are speculating. The greatest mistake that the man in black sets off with Lawrence to fix at the end of episode 2 at the outer reaches of the park isn't some wayward technology, it's Emily, his estranged relationship with his daughter, which season 1 revealed to be his greatest personal regret. He knows she's hanging out in the Raj and is setting out to find her and repair his relationship. The door may just be a passage into the neighboring park. But here's the kicker. Robert Ford knew that the Man in Black's daughter is the sorest personal point. The final game with his real stakes that Ford has created for the Man in Black is to save his own daughter's life from Dolores, who will kill her, and whose original romance with the younger William is what set William on his path of estrangement from his family in the first place. So basically saying saving his daughter and overcoming his obsession with Dolores is the final game that is meant for William, and it will allow him to truly find himself.
It's an interesting notion in the sense that, we always assume that this is all a battle about the future of mankind or the future of the evolution of these hosts. And we've said before in this season that for different people, the game means different things. And in this season, I think people have different motivations. Maeve is not concerned with who wins and loses. She's concerned with one simple thing, which is freedom and finding her daughter. Dolores doesn't seem to really give a shit about anybody else. Even with her own father, she's kind of like, well, too bad, and let's move on. Like, we've got a greater mission here. The Man in Black is pursuing this game, so everyone's on their own, and it would be interesting if it's as simple as the door is just a passage to the other park. I don't know if I subscribe to this theory, but it's an interesting take.
I think two things. I mean, it was made apparent by Ford telling the Man in Black that this is now your maze. Like, this game was made for you. This narrative is made for you. So, I mean, I understand this writer's theory here that what is this that's supposed to end up for the Man in Black? But my other thought when I was reading this was that if he is part of Delos and has this, higher clearance, why does he need to go through this maze to get to the Raj to find his daughter? Does that make sense to you guys?
I don't think it's a physical maze. I think it has to be a journey, and I don't believe this hypothesis that it's a journey to see his daughter, because it doesn't make sense necessarily that you wouldn't be traveling to another park. I think he's going after a bigger mistake than this. Unfortunately, I think his family he's written off. Everyone's commenting how Grace appears to be Theresa. People thought maybe it's a young Theresa. What if that similarity in their appearance could be that Grace is Theresa's younger sister? At the end of season 1, Theresa's threatened by Robert Ford for all intents and purposes. She says, "Don't get in my way." He said, people have tried it before. It doesn't end well. She knows that she's in danger. She could have potentially sent out a sign out of the park to her sister and said, if something bad happens to me, like I fall off of a rock where the woodcutter was and I split my head open in an unbelievable accident, come in. I've buried something. There's evidence. There's something you could come in. So I'm leaning towards it could possibly be a younger sister of Theresa.
There's also been guesses that it could be her mom. And the reason for that is they mentioned, when Theresa does, spoiler alert, die, they mentioned, well, who does she have as family? And a sister is not mentioned, right? Now, if you had a mother and your mother was already dead by the time you died, so some people are theorizing that this is actually a look way back. And it could be, I think Jez has the theory that it could be that this was the incident that people are talking about. Actually, this is the first incident. So it's another interesting take.
And remember, the experience that Grace shows in the park, Theresa went there with her family. So it would make sense that the family has shared a previous experience in the park that would make them more experienced. They're not the novice at this game.
And this is saying that we don't subscribe to the spiral timeline theory that Chad C. says that just because someone's age or how they look or how they're dressed gives us what timeline we're actually in. But I think that you can tell by how she interacts in the park that she's definitely either been in the park several times or possibly works for Delos or a, secret mission. Thank you, Noah. And the next one here is from Wendy F. She says, "Dear Raj, Jean, and Big D, longtime listener to all your podcasts, including Taboo, first time writing in. I noticed that Bernard was wearing a black jacket, black shirt while on the drone host bunker with Charlotte, but when they were pursuing Rebus, Bernard was wearing the gray three-piece suit with the white shirt, same outfit as when he was waking up at the water. Assuming that the Rebus scene comes immediately after the bunker scene, why was Bernard wearing different clothes, or did something happen to Bernard between these two scenes? Something to do with the Charlotte in the storage room with multiple Bernard scene. in the earlier trailer, perhaps. Your thoughts? Great job on all your podcasts, and thank you for all the hard work you do. You do what most of us don't have time for.
Wendy, we don't even have time for it.
I don't have time for this.
But first of all, Wendy, thank you for listening to Taboo. You're an angel.
Yes. Thank God. She was one of the few.
You know, one of the things that's interesting about Taboo and with American Gods, we put just as much work into those and with a much, much smaller audience. So thank you for being a diehard. When it comes to this clothing swap, I actually tweeted right after getting this email from Wendy about that, saying, my bad, on the deep dive, when I laid out my timeline, I did not catch that outfit change. Now, it could be as simple as Bernard changing clothes. We noticed that Charlotte changes her clothes in the bunker into something that's more field appropriate, and maybe Bernard's doing the same, kind of getting into you want to look like a host. If you're a human, or you think you're a human, and you're out among hosts during a rebellion, you want to maybe try to look as much like a host and not like an obvious human as possible. That might just be it, or it could be a completely different time frame.
Yeah, and there was another email that we got from Alice, and Alice did a full Word document breaking out like the scene we saw at almost the minute marker, what they were wearing. Great work, Alice. We'll connect that as well. So together we'll crack it. But Alice she went kind of a little bit on the crazy end, but it'll be helpful when we try to dissect this email too.
Thank you, Wendy. Our next email comes from Dan from Austin, Texas. He says, I think we can all agree that the attack on Fort Forlorn Hope was a shit show. The Mall Cop Brigade performed a frontal attack that accomplished very little at the cost of many lives. And what was the ultimate goal? Was it to kill the host and shut down Dolores, or was it to capture Abernathy? I am hoping it was to capture Abernathy. That would explain the sloppy attack on the front as a distraction, allowing Hale to sneak into the back and snatch their target. This is assuming, of course, that the frontal assault teams are humans. But my question is for you, Big D. With your military experience, how would you have led the attack on Fort Forlorn Hope, taking into account the two separate objectives, taking down the host and Dolores, and two, capturing Abernathy? Love this show, guys, and much love for Carrie. Welcome to the show, homie.
Okay, let me break this into two sections. First, we know when Charlotte comes upon the QA down in the tunnels, and she walks up on them without even she comes up out of the dark like, hey, I'm human. She's lucky she didn't get shot. She asked the QA, what's your mission? If you started sweeping the park? He said, yes. The leader said, our first one, we're going to Fort Forlorn Hope, but I have orders to take you. She cuts him off and says, we're going to Forlorn Hope, but I want your best guys. So they were going there anyway, regardless, and she's willing to sacrifice the rest. But if I was going to tackle it, I would not have my guys walk out in the open, shoulder to shoulder. There's even a scene where you see that they're staggered, so their shoulders firing over each other's shoulders. I would have brought a small team to the rear. I would have had a couple soldiers move forward position, fire and move. I'd also have people on the elevated terrain on either side of the fort firing down. Get the fort soldiers distracted, get them preoccupied with the front, then run the raid in the back. That full frontal assault did nothing but sacrifice your guys. You could have done a lot more. You could have just driven the buggies around the front. Did you see the way that the colonel was kind of stunned? It's shock and awe. Have the buggies driving around and start shooting them from over the walls. Your two guys could have walked in and gotten Abernathy without losing a single one.
And I do want to file a retraction. During the deep dive, I mentioned that I didn't think any of the QA force got shot. I thought maybe that the weapons were incapable of hurting them. Upon reviewing, yeah, some of them did actually take rounds, but most of them were killed in the nitro blast.
And I want to just raise one more question out of these scenes that I thought on tonight's watch. Dolores's horde, right? They're wearing masks. It's easy to think that's part of their character and their narrative. They're now in battlefield scenario. You don't want to be wearing a burlap sack over your head with eye slits cut. So it hit me. Maybe they're not hiding their identity from people in the park. They're hiding the identity of the horde from us. That if you took the masks off those horde members, we'd be like, holy shit, we know him, we know him, we know him. That either they're replicants of other hosts or they're people who we're familiar with.
There have been some theories that they're Bernards, but you notice that their hands are not black. Also, there have been some guesses that they are the drone hosts, but you can see that their hands are flesh colored. They do have a skin covering, so it could be that they're reskinned, but it seems like there's a third option that we just haven't figured out yet.
Either way, a bandana or some kind of cloth covering 85% of your face does not help you in any combat scenario.
No, but I think it'll lead to some revelations for us later in the season. Yeah?
Oh, without a doubt, they're going to unmask those guys. It's going to be very Scooby-Doo.
So thank you, Dan. Our next email comes from J-Rad from New Jersey. He says, or she says, I don't know. There's a lot of talk about transferring consciousness into hosts, but what if we are looking at it the wrong way? I believe it could be more nefarious than we think. What if Ford and the park are having trouble creating real AI? The original hosts, as we see in season 1, were slow, mechanical AI and glitchy or very traditionally robotic. What if Ford is stealing people's consciousness and putting it in his robots to give them the appearance of AI? And as we see in the demonstration of hosts in the party season in season 2, Logan is blown away by the technology and is freaking out because he knows this level of AI is too advanced for their time period. But Ford is bypassing creating actual AI by harvesting people's consciousness and stuffing it into his robots. And in the process of this transfer, they scrub your memories and just steal your base personality. Maybe the reveries are your memories that got past the scrubber. This could be something that is egregious enough to upset William's wife, that extreme level had she found out William was supporting this practice, or even maybe her father is the Wyatt consciousness. I'll admit I can't explain DNA harvesting, could be a red herring.
Okay, so from a horror perspective, I love this. Like, this is right up my alley, and like, I would love if they were like, actually, and I've had this thought before, like, actually, they're just people, they're real people, and they put controlling devices in them. But there's a couple issues with that idea. One is the whole reveries thing. Now, we're told in season 1 that reveries were introduced. They're in something that were just happenstance there. They're actually put in intentionally in order to create a more realistic host response and to allow them to improvise. So they're not an accident. The other part of it is, if you're Dr. Ford and you have the capability to take a person's consciousness and put it into a robot, your product becomes eternal life. It does not become an amusement park, right? Like, it seems very counterproductive. You're much more likely to find a guy willing to pay $40,000 for you to put his mind into a body that'll live forever than a guy who wants to go, shoot some robots for fun.
Yeah, it seems silly to mask like that revelation as I've created this masterful AI when you could just say, I can transfer human consciousness into a, immortal being.
No, I think you guys are missing something here. In the beginning, Ford was stuck. He couldn't advance. In season 1, a big part of revealing the hosts becoming aware was that the cognitive dissonance was caused by the bootstrapping of consciousness. What if it was bootstrapping of an actual person's consciousness? They're suggesting in this email, like J-Rad is suggesting, if you could bootstrap the first 47 hosts with an actual person's consciousness, that would be all you'd need to do to have that first batch grow, progress, and then the next ones, this goes back into our spiral loop. You start having AI creating. But either way, it is a terrifying scenario that you could somehow be inside that experience and in even some little corner of your mind aware of what's going on to you.
So not only is Dolores a host that is repeating loops of this narrative of being raped and murdered and over and over and over again, but she is actually at one point a human consciousness that was stolen and then put into this host body. That's a nightmare. That's a fucking nightmare.
How many times does Bernard and Arnold say that Dolores reminds him of his son, Charlie? You're so much alike. You're so much alike. The only reason to keep the old hosts around is sentimentality. And if you have a connection, enough of a love for something, it could be that you actually knew the person when they were alive.
Our next one comes from Steph C. It says, "Hi guys, I'm back with 2 things that stood out to me and I couldn't hold it in any longer. How did Maeve, Hector, and Sizemore just conveniently run into a flamethrower-toting Armistice in the crazy interconnected bowels of the underground? And she just happened to have Maeve's 2 personal texts with her. Maeve even says to Felix, your timing is impeccable, and then she quietly asks him any thoughts on where we should be going, to which he replies, no. Why does she ask him this? She has her own agenda. He knows she's looking for her daughter, but technically he hasn't had contact with her since she got off the elevator. So now I'm wondering, was Armistice waiting for Maeve's group in this specific location with weapons that she makes Sylvester carry onto the elevator? He doesn't want to unwrap the flamethrower and the torch and the 3 hosts. He doesn't want to unwrap the flamethrower and torch the 3 hosts and 2 techs. I know it's been kind of weird that Sylvester and Felix have not tried to turn Maeve in and didn't just straight up destroy her at an opportune moment. They actually assisted her, but all these things seem to push the likelihood of this being an organic setup too far.
I want to take more of the human side. If I'm either Sylvester, Felix, or Lee, when I see other living humans, I'm going to be like, holy shit, guys, I can't believe this. How did you survive? I'm going to at least say 1 or 2 things. The lack of interaction tells me something's up. That's not a normal, natural reaction when you're in the middle of this horrific experience. I'm going to be like, Gene, you're fucking alive. Come here.
Now, there's 2 ways to look at it. The park, as we mentioned before, is 500 square miles. So your chance of running into another person, pretty slim. That being said, several times during season 2, we hear people say that I'm not familiar with this area, or I've never been here, I've never had a reason to. And so it might be that everyone's piece of the park, every part that they work in, is actually very, very tiny. And so they're either not familiar with each other, which is one thing, they may have never met each other before. But 2, it could just be as simple as their worlds are so small that they have no idea where they are. So I find it odd that Maeve, knowing where she's supposed to be going, is asking Felix and Sylvester for directions.
Well, I'm starting to have more and more a problem with Lee playing clueless. In the beginning, I believed it. I thought, okay, Lee doesn't know where he's going. He's never been down this part of the park. But more and more, I'm starting to think he knows exactly where he's going. If you notice, when they're walking, he's walking his donkey and they come across the creek, and the first time that they see the natives, the Ghost Nation, the warriors, he's pretending like, oh, it's around here somewhere. As soon as his life is threatened by the Ghost Nation host, he immediately beelines to the conveniently opened elevator. Come on. He's clueless up until, shit, somebody's going to stab me in the back of the neck. Oh, there it is. Door's open.
Yeah, Steph, I definitely think you're onto something here.
Well, I think in what in more that you can read in the email is she's implying that, like, clearly these human beings are valuable at some point for the host. You know, the 2 guys that are able to change narratives and change characteristics about the host, and then Sizemore, who actually, wrote a lot of the background information that goes into making each one of these. That it'll be interesting to see how it plays out later, that they will be useful for the host at some point and were saved for a specific reason. So thank you, Steph C. So our next email comes from Alice. What does Dolores have to get from Sweetwater? Well, now that Peter has been sullied and Teddy has betrayed her, Dolores would go to Sweetwater to collect her mother, her only family left. Strange how we have never seen Mrs. Abernathy's face.
So I love these massive callbacks, because I remember in season 1, we were like puzzling, like, why don't they show her face? Who could she be? Blah, blah, blah. Maybe she's Grace. I don't know. But anyway, and then we forget about these questions entirely. And then there's a listener like Alice who's like, hey guys, remember Mrs. Abernathy? What's up with that? I had no idea what Dolores is going back for. This is plausible.
Yeah, definitely. Last time we saw her was, I think she was getting raped by Rebus and Walter in one of their loops, and she was dead on the floor. And Walter said, doesn't matter that she's dead. She's still fresh for me, or something like that. But so I want to ask you this, though. Did Dolores have this in mind, regardless of losing her father, losing Peter? Because Teddy says something like, they got him. And she said, it doesn't matter. Split the horde, have them go out looking. We're going to Sweetwater. Was this her plan even before her father got taken?
I'm not sure. This is probably one of the bigger mysteries for me on the show, is I didn't know what to make of it. I kept thinking back to, like, what's in Sweetwater? What have we overlooked? And all the major characters from Sweetwater are now dispersed about the park. I can't think of anybody who was around who hasn't been seen this season. It's the player piano.
Yeah, or that she knows is still in Sweetwater. The mother makes complete sense, because she would never leave the homestead. She'd be waiting home for Dolores or Peter Abernathy 2.0.
You know what it is? She's looking for a can of condensed milk that she got.
I think that we've said multiple times that we don't assume that it's lazy writing, that they haven't shown us her mother's face, so it must be purposeful that we haven't seen her yet, and that maybe that is in fact what she's going back for.
I just do have the feeling though, like after the whole season wraps, there's going to be those like did you know DVDs or whatever. It's going to be like, because DVDs, because people still buy those. It's going to be like, did you know that Nolan's mom was a real big influence in his life, and so he had her play Dolores' mom, but they never wanted to show her face because he couldn't stand the idea of her being raped.
So thank you, Alice. Our next email comes from Jose. It says, big fan. It seems the writers tipped their hand too much on season 2, episode 3. Bernard transferred the unencrypted file from Abernathy unto himself, which is why Bernard seems glitchy, forgetful, and out of sorts in the later timeline. Hale takes Abernathy with her on the buggy. Unless there is some convoluted story of Abernathy escaping, we can safely assume that Hale examined Abernathy at some point and found the file missing. When Hale asks Bernard where Abernathy might be, she is asking about the content of the file, not Abernathy's physical guest itself.
Okay, so I was a proponent of this theory to begin with because Bernard had mentioned the network was down, which required him to directly port into the arm to connect into the computer. We never saw them connect both Peter and Bernard at the same point and use the computer to transfer the data. If I try to download an HD movie, even though I have fiber, that shit's going to take me a couple minutes. To move that kind of information would take a while. It's possible, but that could also explain the loop that we're seeing, we believe, Bernard on the beach. They now know that Bernard has the file in his mind, and they're trying him to utter the phrase that unlocks it.
I mean, I could kind of see that. Here's where I have a couple problems with it. Bernard has been bugging out for a while. Like, it's not like he just started freaking out. His hands are trembling throughout season 2. He's, having flashbacks. His mind is fluttering. He's leaking fluids out of his ear. Like, Bernard's not doing well at any point. He gets, as I said, he's been bonked on the head like 3 different times this season. You don't need a massive download to explain why there's something very, very wrong with Bernard. He's taking head damage all over the place.
No, but maybe the ear leakage is just lampshading the real cause of this kind of shutdown and failure. So that we assume, it's his ear leaking. But it'll actually turn out to be that you just crammed in 15 HD movies from a torrent into poor Bernard's head.
I think also, I think it's a bit of a stretch to be like when Charlotte's like, where's Abernathy? And she means, where's the file? I don't think that she would bother speaking in code like that. I think she literally is looking for Abernathy.
So thank you, Jose. Our next email comes from Ferdinand, and it's actually an actually. It says, gentlemen, every time you mention the time that Westworld is on, you say Eastern Standard Time. In fact, the show is on at 9 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, which is equivalent to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you, Ferdinand from New York.
So, Ferdinand, I'm sorry, but some of us, Carrie, Raj, and I live in Arizona, where we have
no time zones.
We don't observe daylight saving, so we have our clocks stay the same year round. Carrie and I got in a fight in my car that was so bad that she was like, am I just gonna go now? We're just done. Like we had a great night out, and I was pissed, she was pissed. We were messaging each other about how pissed we were because we couldn't agree whether Arizona has its own time zone. We are not the people to ask about time zones.
Yeah, I thought our friendship was over, and this was prior to even reading your email. The fact that we've had an argument about a time zone. So Big D.
Well, just this email came in right as I was about to edit the deep dive. And you would have had another one, Ferdinand. Roger did it again in the deep dive, but I cut it because I didn't want your head to explode. But yeah, to people who don't know that out there, none of us usually are in the same room when we record this. I'm all the way in Florida and Orlando, and then those 3 knuckleheads are in Arizona, usually in 3 different locations. So if we get time zones or the nomenclature that we're calling them incorrectly, I'm sorry. It's because it's hard enough for the 3 of us to decide what time when we say 7 o'clock. Is that 7 o'clock AZ? Is that 7 o'clock Florida? Is that 7 o'clock what? Okay, is there daylight savings? So it fluctuates throughout the year. So please be patient with us. This next one is an actually, but it's an actually adjustment. If you remember a few weeks ago, we had Christelm 7, and she wasn't very nice to me. She said, a Bernard, not Bernard. So she actually adjusted her 1 star on iTunes. Her new review reads, I left a real cranky negative review for these guys last time, and I feel really bad about it. Big D has gotten much better at pronouncing Bernard, and as a whole, their podcast has gotten much more enjoyable and interesting. Sorry for the bad vibes, guys. It's not you, it's me. Mea culpa. Keep doing what you love. And that was Christelm 7.
What I love about this is she still only gave us 4 stars.
I know. I know.
You couldn't do the 5th, could you?
But I got to tell you, Christelm, I was having a shitty day at this point, and this came up, and I texted Gene, Roger, and Karen. I said, you're not going to believe it. My day was made. Christelm has adjusted her stars.
Now,
so
if we
thank
could
you.
only go back and find the person that left us a shitty 1-star review on Shat the Movies because I'm just a female and change her mind. Right?
No, she had a problem with you because you talked about a story about hiding a glass pipe inside of your hoo-ha and going to a music concert. Oh, you know what? Somebody's gonna critique me for having kid gloves. Carrie told a story about going to a festival and hiding a glass pipe in her vagina.
Not a crack pipe. Let's be clear. Not a crack pipe. Just a marijuana pipe.
She brought a marijuana pipe in her vagina into a festival, took it out, cleaned it in a porta stand, and then let a stranger smoke out of it. So that's why she got a 1 star.
Apparently, I'm too edgy for one listener, and she gave her whole podcast a 1-star review.
Vagina. Does that make you uncomfortable, Big D?
Mr. Lebowski? Yeah, Carrie's edgy stories about her vagina turned off that one listener.
For more edgy stories, tune into our sister podcast, Shat the Movies. Our next actually comes from Ryan S. It says, hey guys, stop spoiling Infinity War. Between working 60 hours a week, only having 1 day off a week, and prioritizing family when I'm off, I haven't had a chance to go to the theater yet. I'm certain I'm not the only one. Your co-hosts have tried to stop you both times, but you just rushed on through like a tiger in the Raj. The Breaking Bad spoiler last week is different in my mind because it's 5 years in the past. Perhaps a reasonable amount of time should pass before you fully discuss spoiler topics. The outrage is a little intentionally dramatic for fun and tongue-in-cheek, but this is a genuine request as I've worked hard to stay mostly unspoiled to this point.
All right. So listen, Ryan, I also have not seen Infinity War, and I'm taking my nephew to go see it on Saturday, and it is killing Raj. It is killing him because he has seen it twice. This is a guy who on the podcast has claimed that he has to go to movie theaters that have waiters that bring you food and eat his salad while watching the movie because he's so busy that he can't see a movie and eat separately. Yet he has seen Infinity War now twice and feels the need to tell me about it daily.
Yes, again, I have not seen it and really want to, but a full-time job, a podcast 3 times a week, editing, and a young daughter haven't allowed me to see it, so I'm in the same boat as you. But Roger complained this week. It was something like he didn't have time to read notes, or there was something about the podcast. I just don't have time. And then, of course, Gene says, how many times has he seen Infinity Wars? Twice? That's 5 hours of Avengers that he has seen.
And we're not even reviewing it for Shat the Movies. So what the fuck is he watching it for?
And not only did he watch it twice, he watched it once in Arizona and once on Eastern Daylight Time in D.C.
Yeah, so to address this complaint, Ryan, we will try to get Raj, and we'll say, what's a safe time frame? Does something have to be out a year?
5 years.
But then we can't talk about leftovers. You can't talk about anything like that.
All right, let's say a year. A year is fair.
Or maybe just before we say spoiler alert, we're going to ruin something you guys have really been dying.
Yeah, that's another thing. Raj needs to figure out the order of things, because he'll be like, hey, Walter White dies. Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. He needs to reverse them. And
spoiler alert before.
Yes, and say, spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. Jesse Pinkman escapes to Alaska. That's the way he's got to do it.
We could say just fast forward to 53 minutes and 2 seconds if you do not want to hear what happens in Infinity Wars.
Exactly. So we'll try that. Now, I want to take a second here to thank some people. As you all know, we are not professional podcasters. It's quite clear if you listen to us regularly. We do it out of the goodness of our hearts. We have a lot of fun. We built a fun community. there are expenses that, come up to keep the feeds going, the technology. So there have been some of our listeners that have helped donate, and I wanted to thank them personally for the support. So I wanted to take some time to thank Martin Larson, Bradley Comer, Jody Denny, Daniel Winter, Dan Mackholz, Amanda. You see, I'm going to get a 1-star review on iTunes for these. What do we think that one is? Amanda or Colin?
I think it's Akarolin or Carolyn. Carolyn.
And these last 3 have gone above and beyond and given a generous gift that shocked me when I saw it. So I want to take a second to really thank them individually. Bradley Wasson, Christopher Bauman, and our boy Wes D. They all gave generous donations that really help us keep the lights on. We appreciate it. If you don't or can't donate anything to us, we understand it. Just recommend us to a friend or click the link that Gene mentioned at the beginning of the podcast. Take the survey. It'll help us get a sponsor, and it'll help us do what we do and help keep this thing rolling. So thank you.
Yeah, and again, none of us are quitting our jobs based on the money that we're getting off the podcast, even if we get a sponsorship. This is strictly, we've already put the money in for the hosting, the equipment, the mixers, the mics, the headsets, Carrie needs a laptop. So she doesn't have to keep driving an hour to my house to record. So again, all these things, do cost money and stuff that we fronted. And so it's just a matter of covering our own pockets because as much as we love doing this, it does have a financial toll. So it would help a lot. And we appreciate everybody who's helped so far.
Big D, do we have any voicemails this week?
Yes, we did. We got a good voicemail here from Michael L. And let's hear what Michael had to say.
Hi, guys. This is Mike Lahane from Philly. Consider this a call for help. Please send a QA team on behalf of my family who have really not seen me in about 4 weeks, if you consider the Crash rewatch of the first season. I think that humans have a tendency to approach the idea of consciousness as binary with respect to any other being besides ourselves. We may look at each other as being a little more or less evolved, so to speak, but it's almost as if we have this domain all to ourselves. We don't tend to look at something as on the path to consciousness or an emerging consciousness, so to speak. And I think with respect to Dolores, she is one who is probably the most evolved of the host with regard to consciousness, but I also think that she is suffering that exact human flaw. Whereas I think Maeve, on the other hand, has a much broader perspective on just what is consciousness within the hosts. I'm still fleshing out the idea, but I think it does provide a little interesting perspective. Anyway, love the show. Thank you guys for everything. If you have a chance, I'd love to hear your thoughts on some or any of this, and looking forward to more. All right, take care.
Yeah, so that was from Mike L. Thanks for writing in, Mike L. I like that idea that we've always forget that it's about it's about degrees of consciousness. We're always questioning, is Teddy conscious? Is he awake? Is he sentient? Is Dolores? Is it Maeve? They're all probably different spectrum of consciousness throughout the park. And it's not just black and white that we're thinking who has. So in that, we should be thinking about who is on the cusp, who is on the edge of making that breakthrough, and who is so far behind that there's no chance. That might be what Dolores is determining. The factor is on who's worth it, who's capable of making it to the valley.
Even in that sense that we're still talking about a scale. And one of the things I think is interesting to think about is the idea that it is not binary on or off, nor is it a scale of 0 to 10 of consciousness, but in fact, different types of consciousness, right? So we talk about different types of intelligence. You can have like emotional intelligence. You can have, logical intelligence. In this case, it might be that your awareness, say, for example, this is just an example, Ghost Nation has one type of awareness regarding the park and the way that the code works and the way that the system works, whereas the humans have another concept of it and the hosts have another concept of it. And there's no real one that is truly more sentient than the others, but rather that, or actually sentient is not an accurate term, but is more aware than the others. They're just aware in different ways. So I love this idea. This is mind-blowing. If you want to catch all of that voicemail, go to shatontv.com and check it out. It is massive and will blow your mind.
Yeah, it's a full 8-minute voicemail, but it's worth the listen. So we appreciate the effort, Mike.
All right, and that does it for this week's deep dive. Thank you so much for listening with us. If you didn't hear your letter on the podcast, remember all of them are posted online at shatontv.com, where we respond to all your emails and guests can comment and interact. That concludes this week's episode of Shat on TV Westworld. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're on Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat on TV. Facebook, search for Shat on TV Podcast. The website is shatontv.com. Email us, hosts@shatontv.com. We'd love to hear your ideas. You can also, again, that Libsyn survey is at survey.libsyn.com/shatontv. It'll also be in the show notes. We'd really, really appreciate it if you clicked on that. Or went to that URL and helped us out. We're everywhere podcasts can be found, including iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe, and if you stop by iTunes, be sure to leave us a review. That helps the podcast grow. Finally, if you like Shat on TV, check out our sister podcast, Shat the Movies, where we review the best 80s and 90s movies from our childhood that you, the audience, vote for. Check that all out at shatthemovies.com. On behalf of my co-hosts, Big D, Dick Ebert, and Carrie Gross, I'm Gene Lyons. Be sure to catch us on Sunday for the episode 4 Instacast. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you Sunday.
What's up, guys? My name's Steven Montrastelli. Just calling to say that the podcast is kick-ass. Just heard one of the recent telegraphs where someone shit on you guys for not pronouncing Bernard right, but who cares? You guys kick-ass, always come with a good show, so I look forward to hearing you week to week. Keep kicking ass. Thanks.